Despite all the evidence, the president recently suggested to some young Americans that things around the world have never been better.
If you had to choose any moment to be born in human history, not knowing what your position was going to be, who you were going to be, you'd choose this time. The world is less violent than it has ever been.
Less violent than ever? The Wall Street Journal today suggested the last time we saw things this bad was back during the Carter administration. And here's what happened when our own Ed Henry today challenged the White House on that.
How does the White House react to the notion that the president is a bystander to all these crises?
I think that there have been a number of situations in which you've seen this administration intervene in a meaningful way that has substantially furthered American interests and substantially improved the tranquility of the global community.
What? Mark Thiessen is a former presidential speechwriter, a Washington Post columnist, and a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Dana Milbank of the Washington Post, not exactly a conservative, comes out and writes today, tranquility? Where? In Iceland? I mean, that's being mocked. Tranquility?
Yeah, tranquility. Yeah, that's the word. That's the word we're looking for. Tranquility. Where is it tranquil? In Israel? Is Israel tranquil? Is Iraq tranquil? Is Syria tranquil? Is Afghanistan tranquil? Is Ukraine tranquil? None of these places are tranquil. This is the least tranquil time we have had since the 1970s. And what do we have in common with the 1970s? Feckless leadership from the White House, which is to all of these crises. President Obama came into power and reached out to our enemies instead of standing shoulder to shoulder with our adversaries, cut defense spending instead of increasing it, and has retreated from the world instead of projecting American power. And the result of that is he wants to restrain American power. Our enemies don't see restraint. They see weakness, and weakness is provocative. And when they see weakness and a vacuum, they're going to step in and fill it, and Islamic radicals are ascendant in the world right now.
But is this comparison to the Carter years fair? Because, you know, there was such malaise in the 1970s on so many fronts, especially the home front, more so than many believe is happening right now in this country. And many have posited that comparison is simply not fair.
It is not fair. I agree with you. It's not fair to Jimmy Carter. The fact is, when Jimmy Carter, after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, Jimmy Carter figured out that he was wrong, and he turned around. The Reagan defense buildup actually started under Jimmy Carter. After the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, he increased defense spending 4.6% and pledged to do it for the next 5 years. He announced the Carter Doctrine, in which he said that America would use military force in order to defend its interests in the Persian Gulf. Has Barack Obama done any of these things? Barack Obama is sending pink slips to our military while all this is happening right now. He's launched the biggest defense cuts in American history. He's withdrawing from the world. He's not projecting American power. I mean, Jimmy Carter, for all of his problems, was actually a more learned from his mistakes and tried to correct them. Barack Obama doesn't seem to be changing anything.
Now, you were, among other things, the chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush, and in particular, you had a focus on foreign policy. You know that he was accused of cowboy diplomacy, of getting us involved in too many wars, of shooting first and asking questions later. And then we had Barack Obama, who took a different tact. You know, critics of George W. Bush would say, we had to change. We had to step out because we had been so aggressive under George W. Bush that the American people no longer had the stomach for further cowboy diplomacy.
Well, you know, I've heard those complaints. There was something called 9/11, which happened, where thousands of people were killed in our midst. I was in the Pentagon, so I felt that building shake. And our country felt the building shake. And so we had to go out and defend our interests. And what has happened is these problems are the result of our policies. Iraq and Syria. Obama wanted to withdraw and end Bush's war, so he pulled out and created a power vacuum. We had defeated al-Qaeda in Iraq, which is now ISIS. We withdrew. They have come back into power, are creating a state in Syria and Iraq. And you know who's helping the Iraqis to defend themselves? Iran. So we now have a situation where our Shia enemies are fighting our Sunni enemies for control of Iraq. That's what happens when America withdraws. And I know people are weary of war, but we can't. What we are seeing, all the pictures you're showing on your screen right now, that is the result of what happens when America does not lead.
Mark Thiessen, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Megan.